I just want to start with a bit of an introduction to the subject. So we're doing interactive design. Come on, interactive design. There. So the subject's interactive designs. So as it says, we're going to look at all sorts of ways that we use interactivity to engage our intended audience, which is often customers for a product or a service. So let's just do a little bit of an overview of the units. This one, we've got a couple of briefs for that, so we'll have a look at that first. And for this first one, this unit, the two assignments, the first one is the research part, and then as part of that you'll then apply it to an interactive publication. Now the previous group did a interactive magazine, but we're going to do a museum interface, so a little museum guide. We'll be working in InDesign, and you may not be aware, but a lot of programs now you can actually export them as HTML5, which means they can sort of be integrated into all sorts of other systems. So that's why if we just have a look at the first, or talk about that unit. So that's going to be, for this brief, you'll be doing the project as well. So you'll research it and you do the project. The second part is research on UX design, so user experience design, and that is the standalone research, which will inform and give you ideas and knowledge to help you with the second term project, which is a UX design process, which will result in you doing a user interface on a phone. So that'll be an app, a food app, and we'll be working in Figma. So you're going to spend the second term entirely working on Figma. You'll also be learning some Figma with Beck for prototyping your portfolio website. So you're going to get some good knowledge of Figma, a little bit of an intro to it in the web class, but then you'll have some basically have a whole term in Figma. So we're going to, so it's important to complete both these because they're going to set you up for the projects. But this one does contain a project. So we'll look at this one first. So if you just want to open that up and download it, and you'll see there's a research PowerPoint there, which is useful for questions on research, which I think there are some in the knowledge test. So that's why that's there. I'm not going to go through that right now. There's something for you to refer to when you're doing the knowledge quest. So let's have a look at that. Sorry, didn't download the right one. Desktop, okay, come to desktop. Okay, so it's called Investigate Technologies for the Creation of Digital Art. And the first thing it's going to ask you to do is to go and look at all sorts of examples. So just scroll down. Do notice it says no AI for this project. However, if you're finding it difficult to get stock images, if you've got something really particular, because it's in the context of a museum guide, you could generate some text and images, but you have to credit it, okay? So only do that if it's something really obscure and you really can't get an image for it or the text for it. You're having trouble sourcing it, because you do have to source text for this. So this is one of the very rare instances where we're saying you can use a bit of AI for it, but you do have to say. So you see, here's the disclaimer.
Yeah.
So within the document, if you've used AI for the text or the image, at the end of the text you'd have to put that disclaimer. Whatever image it is, you'd have to put that disclaimer. Okay, so pretty much right throughout we encourage you not to use AI for your own design work. So certainly for the design part, when you're doing headings and all that sort of stuff and making a nice layout and design elements, we don't want you using AI for that. So where it's really instead of a stock image, you know, you couldn't find the exact thing, then yes, okay, you could use it to generate an image as long as you put the disclaimer in, because it's virtually the same as getting a stock image. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it tells you all that. So down here, we've got some useful links up there, but down here we want to evaluate current, emerging and experimental digital technologies. So we're going to look at different innovative storytelling methods, and this could be interactive pieces by journalists. So you could go to a news website and you might find something. Interactive children's books, there's quite a few of those online you might find. Game interface designs that help tell a story. EPUB magazines, interactive infographics. So we're going to be, if you can find some examples of interactive infographics, that'll be very helpful for this project, because one of the things you've got to put into your little museum guide is an interactive infographic. Information kiosks. So you're probably familiar with walking into somewhere like Westfield and there'll be a big information kiosk. It's interactive, it's a big screen, lets you zoom in and find particular shops within there. So you've probably, has anyone ordered at McDonald's recently? They've got big interactive screens, you know, so they are everywhere around you, and obviously there's a lot of employment in that area of design. And quite specifically, one of our industry guests who comes in and reviews stuff, and who will get to review your EPUB, he does online EPUB magazines, and you know, they're very interactive. We've got a lot of stuff going on. We know movement sells, so that's a key finding from a lot of market research, that, you know, anything that's got movement in it, even more so if there's an interactive element to it. So if a user can touch something, move it around, get very excited by it. We looked at a couple yesterday, a couple of websites even with the portfolio that were really funky and had let things move, and it just is going to generate, in terms of the people that are going to employ graphic design services, the fact that it sells is the thing, you know. So but also just in terms of conveying information, if it's a news website, making that more interesting. So we'll have a look at some examples in a minute of some of those things, and then you'll go off, and that'll be your first job, is to try and find a whole bunch of really interesting interactive storytelling. And I'll put some up on screen in a minute. Then the second part, so this part, you just list them, right? A little bit of what is it? You know, is it an information kiosk? Piece of journalism? Is it a website? And put the URL in there for it. Then you're asked to, down here, to evaluate that research. So that just means a little bit of a summary. Why, you know, what's the impact? What's the interactive stuff doing? Why have they put, you know, if something pops up or something moves in a particular place, can you figure out why they've done that? So a little bit of, you know, back engineering, thinking about their thinking. Why did they do it that way? So what's the impact, and do you think that it's helping people engage? And how is it actually helping communicate and bring the information? How is it helping people read the information? And one of the things you'll notice is that the information in a lot of these things is very chunked down to very, you know, small amounts of information rather than reams of text. And you'll see that with the online news services as well. That there's, you know, and every time you visit a website, you're seeing it. There's less and less large amounts of text. But where you do have a lot of text and there's information you need to get across, say in a museum exhibit, there can be quite a lot of information that you want people to be able to access. You know, obviously it's important to do that in a way that doesn't overwhelm people, that makes it interesting. The same with EPUB magazines, and I'll bring in some examples of student work to show you that sort of interactivity in a minute. So the next part 2, is the actual project that you'll be working on. So this is to get you thinking now about your topic. So if we'll go back and do the research, but initially it's spend a bit of time thinking about what topic you'd want to do, because you'll be researching, you're going to have to find enough text or generate text for and find images for that topic. So don't pick a topic that's so obscure that you can't get any information or imagery. You know, that's just silly. So a little bit of thinking before you start. Choose your own topic for an upcoming exhibit that will take place at the Australian Museum or the Museum of Technology in Sydney. So I suggest you go off and have a look. One of the first things you can do now is have a look at those museums to see which one you'd like to work with. So the Australian Museum, and the third one you could look at is the State Library of New South Wales. They also have exhibitions. So topics, and the State Library, it's often you know, cultural things, sometimes famous photographers, or even exhibitions about books and things that are stored in the library and so on. So you need to go and have a look and see which museum you want to do it for. So topics for the Australian Museum could be natural history. So you could do, you know, you could do a little exhibit just on marsupials. There's probably heaps of stuff out there. And the thing is, you won't need to do the entire exhibition, just one or two items that you want to do the actual pop-up and infographics to. So we're saying it'll be about 6 pages or so. You can do more, but we're not wanting it to be this huge project that you can't get finished by the end of this term. So this project goes for the whole term. So you do the 2 research parts, and then the rest of it we're just going to be making it. So this first part's very important to the research, so you understand and look at examples of interactivity and get ideas. But it will help you when you're collecting relevant research to look at, to have a topic in mind as you go exploring. It'll help you. You go, okay, I could use that bit that I saw on that, I could use that in my project. Okay, so if you were looking at the Museum of Technology, it could be much more technology focused. It could be something about past technology, future technology. You could do a whole thing on cars, and cars of the future or cars of the past. You know, they do history and future. So, you know, they've got, stuff on aeronautical, they've got space. There's so many topics you could do. So you'll be researching those museums, just going and having a look to get an idea of topics that you might like to use. And one of the ways you can get imagery is obviously stock libraries. So you're going to have to track the copyright status of things. So you've got to make sure you've got permission to use them. So the usual websites like Unsplash, Pixabay, all of those. I'll put the names of them up again if you've forgotten. So you will need to, as you start to collect images, you'll need to make sure you're keeping track of the image credits, because you're going to put them inside the actual design. Those image credits will have to appear on the page. They'll be part of the thing you've got to, include. So possible topics, just to give you a little bit of what you might do, you could do one on the history of coffee. There's heaps of imagery and there's heaps of history and there's heaps of text you could find. If you wanted to do the museum, you could do the hidden life of spiders. I'm just making up the names here. You can make up the name for it. The Age of Robots, that would fit in at the Museum of Technology. And you could have a lot of fun with that because there's so much happening in that space. And obviously it's got potential for little animations and all sorts of stuff going on. History of the book, that would be a good one for the State Library. And, they do all sorts of stuff to do with publications. Weather chasers, okay, again, weather, storm chasers, that would fit with natural history. So you could do something on storms and how they're made and all that sort of stuff. Future cars, Museum Technology. History of chocolate, that's another one like coffee. Thousands of images out there, guys. Space exploration then and now. Good old dinosaurs, there's always exhibitions of dinosaurs. Dungeons and Dragons, and then think about the museum. It doesn't just do natural history, it does have exhibitions like the pharaohs of Egypt, for example. Plenty of topics for you, so go and have a look at their past exhibitions, and you might just get a name from one of those. Think, okay, I could do that, do my own version of that. So the idea is not to take an existing exhibition, because you're going to be distracted by what they've already done, and you've got free rein to name it and bring up your own design style to it. So it's wide open. I've got Dungeons and Dragons there, so you could do something to do with gaming. Those are all possible. Yeah. All of those, any of those are possible. Yeah, you could do the history of gaming, or or the future of gaming, or like anything. Yeah. So run the topic past me once you've decided. Try and come up. That'll be one of the first things you'll need to do. Choose one exhibition to focus on rather than the whole museum. Right, so it's not a guide for the whole museum, just to be really clear. It's just a little guide, an interactive guide. And now normally those guides would be quite extensive. There'd be something for every single thing that's in the show. Well, we don't want to do every single thing because we'll just be there forever. So we're just going to focus on one or two actual displays that are in there. So you imagine people walking past with their iPad guide. They walk past it and they can look at their guide. There's an image that relates to what they're seeing, and all sorts of information pops up about it which they can explore further. So rather than staring at a huge board next to the exhibition with a whole bunch of text on it that people probably aren't going to read, they might, but a lot of people won't. Rather than that, you're presenting the information about what is on display, and more imagery about it, and more information, and more history, or more facts to explore for the person around that particular exhibit. So you can have a lot of fun with this. Obviously it's great to have an infographic that talks about that. Define the intended audience. So that's one of the other things you'll do. Think about how old. If it's dinosaurs, it's probably younger kids with families. Okay, if it's one on, Dungeons and Dragons, or, it's something to do with the game and esports, then that's going to be quite a different age group, and the gender mix might be different as well. So try and figure out who you'll be talking to, what their lifestyle and interests are, and like if you're doing something highly technical at the Museum of Technology, again that could be quite a distinctive audience. I mean, for example, when they run, Museum of Technology also does host Design Week, for example. It's graphic designers that are going to that, and people who are interested in art and creativity. So, you could even do one for Design Week, like the topic's wide open, guys. But, obviously if you've got an interest in something and you personally have a collection of images that you could use, that's terrific too, as long as they're good enough quality to use, then I don't have an objection to that. But once you do a bit of brainstorming today, once you've decided on a topic, or you might have a couple, then you'll do a bit of a chat with me today, and I'll just sort of work my way around the room and just ask you what you're thinking, because we want to make a decision on this today. We don't want to spend weeks going, I might do this, get lost in the internet going and finding various images. So we really want to pin you down on your topic today, so you can get going on, making sure you've got enough imagery and enough text to go with our little showcase. Obviously the style is going to be determined by the audience. So if it's a young, audience of families with little kids that are going to see dinosaurs, there's going to be a completely different set of colours and a completely different kind of typography to appeal to a younger audience. Yeah, we're all used to doing that. So that's why you need to define your audience and then outline your ideas to begin with about, just immediately start thinking what kind of type, colours, image treatment. You can even make yourself a mood board and put it in here if you want to put the design style approach in as a mood board, that's also great, you know. It's a very visual way for you to start thinking about who you're designing for and what might appeal to them. You might do a couple of mood boards and sort of be going between two different colour sets before you make your choice. So by now, you know, I mean, we don't even write it on here, do a mood board, because we expect that, you know, after going through the course you've been through so far, that you think, yeah, of course I'd do a mood board when I first started design. That's, you know, that's going to help me make design decisions and get a design direction. So write down who they are, and then some thoughts about your design approach, and then make it visual, make mood boards. So some of the things you're going to be asked to include, and this is where you're going this morning, going and having a look for examples is going to help you, because you're going to see slideshows and image galleries, and I'll bring in the iPads which have got the magazine epubs from the last couple of years, and we're not doing a magazine this time, so we're doing something a little bit different. But nonetheless, you can still see some of the features we'll be making in InDesign. So slideshows and images, image galleries will show you some of those. Animation, so elements that slide in, slide out. You can also have objects go down a path. So in InDesign, you probably don't realise it, but it's actually got some of these. They're fairly basic tools, so they're not anywhere near as demanding as doing an animation in, you know, After Effects. You know, they're just really basic stuff. So they're very easy to use. The point of it is not, you know, wow, what complex technology can I use to make this complex thing? That's not the point. The point is, what am I trying to do? And if there's a simple tool to do that, use that, you know. Don't overthink it when you're trying to do little animations and things. And we'll also, we will also, have I got you, what have I got you for? What other subject have I got you for?
Yesterday's.
Yeah.
So that would be...
Oh, so you'll have advertising as well. Yeah, I think it's one of your subjects.
Yeah.
So in that, I'm not sure who's teaching it. Peter. Okay, yeah, I talked to him about it. We're introducing you to a little bit of the Adobe Express, because it's, again, got really simple, fast, it's very similar to Canva, super easy ways of getting interactivity without getting buried in After Effects, for example. Yeah? And GIF animations will work brilliantly on the iPad, and you just drag them into your project and they just play. So we'll definitely make sure you can make your animations. So sometimes you might want something to spin around and do something. You can do it as an animated GIF, and then if you want it to also move across the page or something, you can then do that part. So you can bring an animated GIF into your iPad, into your InDesign file, and then just do the moving part in InDesign, but it's a pre-animated little thing doing something. So we'll show you some examples of that as well. Movie elements, so actually part of it you should go, again, alerting you to this, because for some topics you might find it hard to find a movie. So again, finding copyright-free movies. Is it Pixabay? No, Pexels, I think, has quite a good array of free movies. Really easy to find one on coffee, guys. There's all these coffees being made, and you know, coffee pouring, and you know. So whatever your topic is, go and have a look and see if you can also source at least one movie. Okay, so it's another form of engagement. We know it's something moving on the page. So you'll basically have an InDesign page with a movie playing in it, right? Really easy stuff to do. It has to be an MP4 though, and you literally just drag it in and it plays. Can't see it playing on screen, but once you export it to the iPad, you will see it. Hyperlinks, so that'll be a link outside. Maybe, you know, if you did dinosaurs and people are interested, you might want to link them either directly to the museum website, or you might want to link them to some other source of information. Maybe there's another website that has further information. If you did one on cars, you might, you know, if you're doing it on the F1 or something, you might link it to, you know, something, an external website or something. Just imagine. So again, you might think about what that could be. Sponsor websites would be the main thing. If there's a sponsor for the, say you did history of spiders or something. I don't know. You might link to the reptile park that does the spider milking up at, it's on the way north, not far from here actually. That they, you could link to something like that. So it's irrelevant. There's more information about it. If you did one on reptiles, perfect, navigation buttons. So I'll show you examples of that. So we're going to be able to start with a contents page, gives a little bit of an outline and intro, and then we'll be able to navigate forwards and backwards with navigation. And so buttons, symbols, and something that takes you back to the beginning again, those things. And then one interactive infographic about the topic, which will have little pop-ups or slide-in features for more information. So you can pop up an extra image or you can pop up text. So the infographic just needs to have this stuff happening with it. So this infographic is something you design yourself for the topic. So I know you've got another, I think you might have an infographic in another, is that you guys doing that? Or is that cert 4? Can't remember.
We did infographic last semester.
You did one last semester. So you've had a little bit of experience in designing an infographic, and this is a perfect example of where you're going to make one yourself. So this one should not be done with AI. So you're going to make that from scratch. Of course, you can look at other infographics out there on the same topic, but then, make your own, yeah? And then make it interactive, make it do stuff. So people touch it and something happens. Maybe a little bit more info about that statistic or that representation pops up. Maybe it's a pie chart that does something, or it just simply reveals an image, text reveals the image, or other way round. Yes, so we'll look at, if it's hard for you to imagine at this point, don't worry, you're going to look at lots of examples. As long as you've got in your mind, this is where we're heading, and then we'll look at doing all this other stuff. Yes, so there's quite a lot of work just in doing the research and deciding on your topic, and then as quickly as you can, collecting the imagery and the text that you think would work, and kind of outlining what you think that maybe you need to actually do a couple of sketches to visualise what would the exhibition look like, what picture would I put up there, or what would be on display that my iPad, as I'm walking around the show, looking, that's going to relate to that. Does that make sense to everybody? All right? Okay, so first thing's going to be to go and have a look. I will actually show some examples. I'll just go and get them. But you can already start looking for examples. And I will also go and get those iPads to show you some interactive magazines.